Hello everyone, Mariko Berg, residential realtor with the Bridgewell Real Estate Group, and welcome back to the Bridgewell Group YouTube channel where I talk about all things real estate, specifically in myself and my team's market, the Greater Vancouver and Fraser Valley areas of British Columbia, Canada. And today's video is going to be about buying first versus selling first. This is a question that our team gets asked all the time, and it's essentially what is better? Should I buy first? Should I sell first? What should I do? This ultimately really depends on yourself and your situation, but I want to use this video to give you an overview of what the pros and the cons are of buying first versus selling first. What are some things that you should consider in terms of risk tolerances to figure out which option is better for you? And I'm also going to briefly cover ways to mitigate certain risks of buying first versus selling first, like a subject to sale and what that means, and then also bridge financing. So without further ado, why don't we just get into it? So starting off with the pros of buying first versus selling first, when we're looking at the positives when it comes to buying first, there's two main ones that I would really focus on. So the first one is going to be that you're not in any rush to buy something. You're not in a timeline necessarily, like if you had sold your property, you already have completion dates, move out dates, like you know when you need to move out by, and you're like feeling pressured to maybe find something within that period of time. But what if you don't find that place that you really like, right? You don't experience that when you're buying first because you actually have the luxury to wait until the right home comes along. So as I say here, no rush, and you can wait to find the right home. This is going to be really leaning towards people that maybe feel like the options that they've seen out there, particularly if you've been looking for a while in that exploratory phase, are few and far between, or a unicorn, or if you're just really particular about components or styles or types of homes that just don't come up very often. Another one for buying first that's going to be a pro is that you don't have to have a lot of concern about needing alternative accommodation, right? So when you sell a place, what if you don't find that place and you need to maybe rent for a little bit, or get an Airbnb or something like that, right? You don't have to worry about that with buying first because you already know that you found the home that you're going to move into. So regardless of whether or not your home sells in exactly the same timeline, or maybe you don't even need to sell your home in order to buy this home, you know that you're going to have a roof over your head one way or another, whether that's in your existing home or whether that's in the one that you're going to be moving into. So moving on to the pros of selling first, the number one factor, in my opinion, is always going to be that you have full confidence that your home has sold. When you are buying first, there's always the risk that your home might not sell, or even if it does sell, that the dates might not line up perfectly, so you have to finance your purchase before your completion funds come through for your sale, for example. So the risk here is that you would have to pay double mortgages. And when you are selling first, because you know you've sold, you know how much you've sold for, you know the dates that you have to move out and all of those factors, you just have more knowledge and you don't have to worry about having that double mortgage. So that's absolutely one of the positives when it comes to selling first, and a really big reason why a lot of people will lean to selling first, particularly in slower or more balanced markets. Number two is that you generally are going to have stronger buying power. So once you've sold your home, when you go to buy your next home, you can communicate to that seller that you have sold your home. You know exactly how much you've sold for, so you can confidently give a price that is more agreeable to both the buyer and the seller. And they are probably going to feel like you are a little bit more motivated in terms of moving forward, that you have a higher likelihood of removing subjects than someone, say, that is buying first. They still have to worry about like, oh, is their home gonna sell? Regardless of whether or not there is a subject to sale on that offer when someone is buying first. So overall, I think there's just a lot more confidence when it comes to selling first, whether that is, with regards to you having sold your home or going out to buy that next home and confidently being like, yes, like I'm committed to this place and I wanna move. So now moving on to the cons of buying first versus selling first. When we're looking at buying first, there are three main negatives that I think that we should focus on today. So number one is going to be that when you have bought your home first, assuming that you need to sell a home or you want to sell a home to use that equity to finance the purchase, the first thing here is that we don't know how much you've sold for, right? So obviously in a negative kind of connotation, there's the risk that you end up selling for less, right? So that can put you in a little bit of a pinch in terms of when you are buying first. So you always want to make sure that you're working off of very conservative numbers in terms of your market valuation for your sale, and that at the very least you've done a thorough market evaluation for your sale with the realtor that you're working with. However, I think that maybe what some people don't think of is there's also like the positive side of this is like, what if your home actually sells for more? And what if it sells for significantly more? Would that have potentially impacted your decisions on what it was that you were purchasing? Maybe if it's like 15 to 20K more, it doesn't make a huge difference, but I've seen situations where, in really hot markets, things have sold for like $100,000 more than what you were expecting. Would that $100,000 impact the options that you maybe would have considered if you were to have sold first and had that knowledge up front? So that's definitely a consideration when it comes to a negative of buying first. So moving on to number two, the more extreme risk in terms of buying first is going to be that what if your home just doesn't sell at all? What if by the time you have completion for your purchase, you have your home listed and all of those things, but it hasn't sold yet? So in the situation of buying first, it's generally good to obviously work off of conservative numbers, but also consider what if your home doesn't sell? Do you have the ability to pay both mortgages, but more importantly, do you have the ability to qualify for a mortgage for this purchase without having sold your home? So that's definitely something that you want to consider. Last but not least, for the cons of buying first, in both situations, honestly, whether you buy first or sell first, there's always going to be a risk that the dates don't line up. So in a very perfect world scenario, when you're buying and selling at the same time, ideally you want the money from your sale to go to fund the money to your purchase. You want to move into your new home and then you want to move out of your old home. That allows everything to be really smooth and you don't have to bridge finance, you don't have to worry about differences in dates. But obviously that is a very perfect world scenario because it's like there's so many different moving parts to this. It's like, is the house that you're buying, does that seller also need to buy something? You obviously have to sell your place. There's a long chain here of different preferences. And so you do have to consider that the con could be that the dates might not line up perfectly. And when you're buying first, generally, this scenario is going to look like the completion, so the money from your sale might happen after you have already committed to completing and purchasing your new home, right? So in that situation, there might be a period of time where you're going to have to pay a double mortgage, or if you flip that around and for some reason you want the sale to complete before, you might need to work on some alternative accommodation. But generally, I'm finding that when you're buying first, you are committing to the completion before the completion of your sale in the event that your dates aren't lining up. Now, when it comes to the cons of selling first, you're going to notice that a lot of the pros of one thing is going to be the con of the other thing. And so in a buying first situation, you don't really have any rush. Obviously, that's the con of the selling first situation where you are going to feel more pressure inevitably, right? It's like, yes, you know exactly the price that your home has sold for, but you also predetermine the dates that you're going to be moving out. And so generally when you're selling first, you're wanting to negotiate a little bit of a longer timeline to allow you to be able to find the right home or a home that works for you within that period of time. And so there is always going to be concern around whether that right home will pop up because there's only so many things that you can control. And generally the market and what inventory is coming to market is not one of those things. So definitely something that you'll want to consider when you're deciding whether to sell or buy first. And then lastly, again, in both of these situations, you're always going to run the risk of your dates not lining up. So in a sell first situation, again, it's like if you don't find the right home within that period of time, generally what that means is that you're going to have to be lining up some form of alternative accommodation. And whenever we're dealing with a situation where we are selling first, this is always a question that we ask right off the bat is, do you have alternative accommodation? Whether that be parents, whether that be Airbnb, whether that be, maybe you're considering renting, whatever that situation is, it's good to have that backup option because you might not find the right home. And even if you do find the right home, you might not get it. What if you're in a multiple offer scenario? What if you can't come together in terms of the price? All of those things you have to factor in and ultimately know that there is going to be a risk of the dates not lining up. So 2 things that I want to talk about in terms of mitigating some of these risks of buying first versus selling first are going to be a subject to sale and then also bridge financing. So starting off with subject to sale, like what does this mean? This essentially means that when you go to purchase the property, you put a clause in there that says it's subject to the sale of your existing home. So generally you have subjects on a contract, which are your ability to back out of the deal as a buyer. These are generally in the realm of about a week, and they might be like financing, strata documents, property disclosure statement, inspection, those kind of things in my market, right? Now, when you're dealing with a subject to sale, that subject to sale is typically a longer period of time because most people aren't going to sell their homes within a week, right? So depending on what the market conditions are, that subject to sale might be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. That's something that you're going to have to discuss with your realtor. But the reason why I want to bring this up is because when we're looking at the con of buying first, we're unsure of how much you've sold your home for, and there's a risk of your home not selling. So having a subject to sale on the contract when you are buying first helps to mitigate these risks, because essentially if your home doesn't sell within that period of time, you can still back out of that purchase without any harm, any foul, again, depending on how the contract is worded with regards to the deposit and whatnot, if there's any penalty. So that's definitely something to consider as a risk mitigator, particularly if you are going to buy first and if it is a consideration in your market. Some things I will say about a subject to sale is it's not necessarily something that I would bank on for a couple different reasons. Number one is there's often a bump clause or a shotgun clause where essentially another buyer, if they do not have a home to sell, could bump your subject to sale offer, where you have to decide whether or not you're going to let the property go and give it to them, usually within a very short period of time, like 24, 48 to 72 hours that bump clause can be, or remove the subject to sale and move forward with the risk of your home not having sold, assuming it hasn't sold yet. The other thing about a subject to sale is that you have less buying power. So again, when you've sold first and you've sold your home, the seller is confident that you're able to move forward. When you have a subject to sale on there, there is more risk for the seller because they have to wait a longer period of time to know whether their home has sold, and they don't know when your home is going to sell or how much it's going to sell for. So you have to keep in mind that generally in real estate, you're negotiating price, dates, and subjects. And if you want more subjects on the contract or longer subjects on the contract, or maybe you have very specific dates that are less desirable for the seller, then generally that means that they are going to want an offset in some sense, and you might be paying more for that property. So in many situations, when you have a subject to sale versus if you do not have a subject to sale, when you have that subject to sale, it is likely that the seller is going to expect an offset in terms of the price to help compensate them for the risk that they're taking on. So another thing that I want to talk about is mitigating risk in terms of dates. So you can do something called bridge financing, which you have to talk to your mortgage broker about and you have to qualify for. But essentially, if you have 2 firm offers, so accepted offer and subject remove, on your sale and on your purchase, you may be able to qualify for something called bridge financing, which is essentially a bridge loan between your purchase completing and your sale later completing, because in this situation, generally people are waiting to get the money or the equity out of their sale to help fund their purchase. So again, what happens in this situation when your purchase completes before your sale? That's where you would look to essentially get a bridge loan, which is often some kind of setup fee and then a per diem cost to help bridge that time in between. So it might not always be the case where you're paying a double mortgage and making the assumption that I have to be able to qualify for both properties without my home selling, right? that's an extreme situation, but you might also want to preemptively look into bridge financing, because that could help to bridge that gap of the dates not lining up. You'll have to pay the double mortgage for that period of time, but there's the assumption made that because you have a firm deal on both properties, that eventually the bank will be paid back because the equity will come out at that agreed upon time. So to answer the ultimate question of this video, what is better, buying first or selling first? At the end of the day, as you guys can probably guess, it depends. So this really depends on your personal situation and what your risk tolerance and options are, but also market conditions. So starting off with market conditions, it's like, what kind of market are we in? Are we in a slower buyer's market? Are we in a balanced market? Are we in a super hot market? You need to be having a very serious conversation with your realtor about how much your home could sell for, how fast similar comparable homes are selling for, what that timeline hypothetically looks like in terms of averages for completion, what options there are out there in terms of what you're looking to buy for. There's a lot of upfront research that needs to be done on the sell and the buy side so that you can make a completely educated and informed decision on which option is going to be best. Now, particularly, we have to look at what market we are in. Are all of the homes selling super quickly and essentially like guaranteed to sell? If the answer is yes, then absolutely it might be a better decision to buy first, right? Because generally in those hot seller markets, inventory is low and demand is really high. So that's that risk, is like, what is the bigger risk? Your home not selling or you not finding a place to buy? And generally in a hot market, that is why some people might lean to buying first, because they know that the risk of their home not selling is very low based on market conditions. Now, on the flip side, if we're in a cooler market or more of a balanced market where we're seeing things take a long time to sell, or there's uncertainty around how long it will sell or how much it will sell for because maybe prices are going down, then that's definitely a situation where we would want to seriously consider selling first, because we need to have that confidence that you've actually sold, because the risk of you carrying that double mortgage is much higher in a cooler market than in a hotter market. So this is an example of how you really need to think about what kind of market you're in and make sure that the realtor that you're working with has that information and is giving you that accurate information so that you can make an educated decision. So then, market conditions aside, you also need to think about your personal situation and what the risk tolerance is between these two scenarios, right? So again, going back to like, are you the type of person that is really picky and the property that you're looking for is a complete unicorn? That could be, a reason why you would buy first. But also, are you the person that can carry two mortgages and you can qualify for your purchase without having to sell your home? Well, a lot of these cons or these risks of buying first are all of a sudden reduced quite significantly based on that piece of information, right? Versus in a selling first situation, it's like, do you have alternative accommodation? If you do, and you can like live with family and they've got a massive house that's vacant or a basement suite or whatever that situation is, and you're like, no, like I want to know how much my home has sold for, the right place will come, I'm still not in a rush, then that risk of, not having anywhere to live or not finding the right place within that period of time all of a sudden reduces as well. So again, whenever you're making the decision on whether it's better to buy first or sell first, you just have to look at the risk tolerances of your current situation and the market situation and then make a decision from there. So thank you so much for watching this video on buying first versus selling first. Again, my name is Mariko Berg and I'm a residential realtor in the Greater Vancouver area with my team, the Bridgewell Real Estate Group. And we deal with this all the time. This is a really big and loaded question. And so if you are looking to buy and sell in the Greater Vancouver or Fraser Valley areas, definitely feel free to reach out to our team to help you make that decision on whether buying first or selling first is going to be best for you. And obviously do all that due diligence like market evaluations, exploratory options, and all of those things up front so that you can move forward in the best way possible. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.